Mic check, 1 2 1 2. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Gyms with Josh. I'm your host, Josh. And week 2 of the NFL season is in the books. Man, an exciting week. We learned a lot of things about players and trends going on in fantasy football, as well as betting that'll probably help us out going on later in the season. Some players aren't living up to expectations when we drafted them. Some are, right? There's a lot of season left. We got a bunch of weeks to go. Don't panic. That would be my main advice I would give anybody after week 2 is don't panic. No matter if you're 0-2, 1-1, 2-0, don't panic. Some of those guys, you just got to ride it out and see exactly what we get. And when we get around about week 6, make your adjustments. But starting off this EP, guys, let's look at the waiver wire for this week. A guy that I love this week on the waiver wire, Quinshon Jenkins from the Cleveland Browns, right? First game last week. Off of the suspension, he went over 60 yards rushing. Been saying it for a while. He looks like he's going to be the RB1 in that offense at some point this season. If he's in your waiver wire, any leagues that you're in, you want to grab him up. Maybe don't start him right away, but stash him. He looks like he's going to be one of those guys in the long run who can help you become a league winner. Another guy on the waiver wire right now that I'm seeing a lot of action from, and I actually love watching him play, Troy Franklin, wide receiver from the Denver Broncos, right? Just last week, he had 8 targets in that offense. So he's clearly become wide receiver 2 in that offense. And I think he's going to be trending upwards the rest of the season. If you see Troy Franklin in your league and he's on the waiver wire, definitely want to pick him up, put him on your bench. Never know what might happen with him. And our last guy on the waiver wire, if you haven't done it already, you need to go ahead and do it. But Harold Fannin Jr. from the Cleveland Browns, tight end. He's pretty much getting the same amount of target share as their number 1 guy, Njoku, right? In the first 2 games, man, he had 9 targets in the first game and he had 5 targets in the second game. He is a real part of that offense, and I think it's going to continue no matter who the quarterback is. Harold Fannin Jr., if he's on your waiver wire, definitely want to pick him up. So let's go ahead and get into week 3 of the NFL season and give you guys some gems that are out there that I think, will really help you this week when setting your lineups. Let's go ahead and start with the QB position. Maybe a little bit surprised for some, but not for me. Caleb Williams going against the Dallas Cowboys, right? I know the media says Caleb Williams is this, he's that, he's not living up to expectations, etc., etc. But if we're talking about a guy that you just need to put in your lineup, he's a good one to put in there, man. In the first 2 weeks of the season, he's had 2 touchdowns in both games. I know the first game he threw for 1, he ran for 1. Last week he threw for 2 scores. Going against Dallas this week, if you watched the Dallas against Giants game last week, Russell Wilson looked like something from the past, right? Threw for 400 yards, a bunch of touchdowns. I think Caleb Williams will have a good day against the Dallas defense again this week at home. If you're looking for somebody to stream this week, a gem to put in, I think Caleb Williams against the Dallas Cowboys, I think that'll be a good fit for you. Another guy I like this week, man, Sam Darnold versus the New Orleans Saints, right? I know, Sam Darnold, right? Another good streamer for this week. And my main reason why I picked Sam Darnold for that this week is you guys see Mac Jones against the New Orleans Saints last week. He looked really good. Over 250 yards passing and 3 touchdowns against that defense. I think Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than Mac Jones, and he has better weapons in his offense. So if you're looking for somebody to stream this week, Sam Darnold is a good fit going against the New Orleans Saints. So that's it for our quarterbacks for this week. Coming up, running backs for this week, Jordan Mason versus the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, Aaron Jones is going to be out for a while with a hamstring injury. Jordan Mason's looked pretty good in that offense in general. And this week, he's also playing with a backup quarterback, Carson Wentz. All right, so the main reason I like Jordan Mason this week is purely off of value. He's probably going to get anywhere close to 15 to 20 carries this week. So if you got Jordan Mason on your bench, definitely might want to think about starting him this week. He's going to have a ton of value against that Cincinnati Bengals defense coming up this week. All right, another guy I love this week, Kenneth Walker Jr., also against the New Orleans Saints. The Saints so far this year have been giving up close to 5 yards per carry. I know a lot of people are worried about Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. Who's RB1, who's RB2, who's getting the carry. It's been kind of very week to week. Charbonnet was better week 1. Kenneth Walker was better week 2. But I like Kenneth Walker going into the 3rd week as well, simply because the first week Kenneth Walker was coming off an injury in camp. Kind of had to get his wheels back rolling. And I thought he looked really, really good in week 2. Going against the Saint defense, again, giving up over 5 yards per carry, basically. I think Kenneth Walker is a good start this week if you got him. lock him in. And last but not least, man, that guy, Bill Merrick-Krosky from the Commanders, going against the Raiders this week. Main thing with him as well is going to be volume. Austin Eckler towards Achilles last week. Looks like Bill's going to be RB1 for the rest of the season. Commanders known to like to run the ball. Going against the Raiders this week, I think RB1 volume, a lot of volume this week from Bill. I think you want to lock him into your lineups. Bill is one of those names that's going to really, really creep up these next couple weeks with the volume. All right, let's go to wide receivers for this week. Going back to that Cowboys versus Bears game, Rome Odunze, right? Said it in earlier EPs before the season started. I thought Rome Odunze would be wide receiver 1 for the Chicago Bears, and he is living up to that expectation right now. Looked amazing last week against the Detroit Lions. And on the season, man, he's got 3 touchdowns and he has over 20 targets. Clearly, he is that guy in that offense. And being a Cowboy fan right now, hey, man, our secondary is looking really, really bad. I think Rome is going to have another big week going against the Cowboys. If you got Rome Odunze, lock him in. One of my favorite guys, man, finally showed up last week. Juwan Jennings from the 49ers, right? He's going against the Cardinals this week. Lock him in. Last week with Mac Jones, he had over 10 targets, okay? Volume. And he had a touchdown last week. I think he's going to go even crazier this week. Last week he played against the Saints. This week they're going against Arizona. 10 targets last week against the Saints. I think Juwan Jennings is going to be a staple of that offense, especially with George Kittle out. I think you really want to lock him into your lineup this week. Juwan Jennings, trust me, he's going to go in this week. And last but not least on our wide receivers for this week, I got Hollywood Brown going against the New York Giants, Chiefs versus the Giants this week. Hollywood Brown, through 2 games has 21 targets. All right, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a whole lot of people to throw the ball to. Hollywood is one of those guys that he feels he can rely on. 21 targets through 2 games. You watched the Cowboys-Giants last week. Giants secondary didn't look very good. I think Hollywood Brown is in for a big week this week. Lock him into your lineup. All right, and let's finish off with our tight ends for the week. Here's a gem for you, man. Kyle Pitts going against the Carolina Panthers. Kyle Pitts in the first 2 games of the season has looked, pretty good. He's had over 5 targets in both of those games. I think Michael Penix really does look for him. I think he's going to have a big week going against Carolina. So if you got Kyle Pitts sitting on your bench, you're looking for somebody to stream at tight end. If you don't have, a Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, Joku, guys like that, Kyle Pitts will be a really, really good streamer this week going against Carolina. Again, 5 targets in both games coming up this season. He's due for a real breakout game. Lock Kyle Pitts in. And another guy like this week, Dalton Kincaid versus the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins defense is struggling out there. Buffalo's at home, short week. TNF, he's had 6 targets last week going against the Jets. I think Dalton Kincaid will definitely have another big week going against the Dolphins. He's one of those guys that you could definitely lock in. I know the last 2 years he's kind of underwhelmed a lot of people because they thought he'd be doing a lot more in that offense, but I think Dalton Kincaid this week will have a great week. Definitely one of those guys you want to lock in as a streamer. So this week, man, Thursday Night Football, we got the Bills going against the Dolphins. And to be totally honest, not a huge, big fan of this matchup here. Not a lot of things out there on the betting end that I'm super excited about, but there's a few things I think we could lock in for Thursday Night Football. 6 play on Prize Picks. Again, Prize Picks is where we're betting a lot, but you can also do this on MGM or whatever bet apps that you lock in on. The guy in that game that I love simply is James Cook. 3 of my bets I have locked in on James Cook in that game. They have James Cook, 2 receptions, definitely going up on that one. I think Josh Allen is going to drop the ball off to James Cook in that offense, so I like that a lot. Another one that they have for James Cook is 84.5 receiving plus rushing yards. I think he's going to go over that. James Cook is the number 1 guy in that offense. He's catching the ball out of the backfield, and he's getting a good amount of carries. I think James Cook, 84.5 receiving plus rushing yards, TNF, going up on that one. And last but not least for James Cook, 0.5 touchdowns this week. James Cook will get into that end zone. I feel like that's a safe bet with him. So, yeah, James Cook, 3 of those things, lock those in. Another guy like in TNF this week, Jalen Waddle, 52.5 receiving yards. I think he's going to go up on that. Definitely was inspired, and I like what I saw with Jalen Waddle in that offense last week with Tua. I told you guys a week before, going back home, the Dolphins were going to have a better week after that stinker in week 1. 2 or 3 for over 300 yards. Tyreek went crazy last week. Jalen Waddle had a good game and a touchdown. I think 52.5 receiving yards this week. I think he'll go over that again. I think Tua and the Dolphins are going to have to throw the ball to kind of try to stay in that game with Buffalo. So locking him in at 52.5, good bet. Matt Prather, man, came off of, retirement, coming to the Bills. 1.5 field goals this week. I'm going up on that one. Since he's come to that Bills offense, he's pretty much had 2 field goals or better in every game. So I feel safe taking that bet. They're at home. The Bills are going to move the ball. If they don't score touchdowns, they're easily going to be in the red zone kicking field goals. Matt Prather, 1.5 field goals this week. I'm up on that one. And the last one in that 6th play, and I will upload all of this on this EP so you guys can see it. Tua, 0.5 pass touchdowns this week. I'm locking that one in as well. Again, I think the Dolphins are going to have to really, really move the ball to be able to stay in the game with Buffalo this week. I think Tua will definitely throw a touchdown. He's been dropping it a lot off to A-Chain, and he's been dropping off a lot underneath to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. So I definitely see him getting in the end zone this week. 0.5 pass touchdowns, up on that one. Again, guys, thank you guys so much for, reposting, commenting on the TikTok, for the bets and, what players you want to lock in for your lineups each week, man. All the love shown is greatly appreciated, and we're going to keep this thing going. Again, every Sunday, though, we lock in on TikTok on our live around 12 to 12:30 p.m. East Coast, locking in good bets for that day, locking in lineup changes and all those things. We'd love to have you guys on that TikTok this Sunday. Stay tuned for that. Until then, man, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and again, follow us on TikTok. Thanks for all the support. Gyms with Josh.